Hey guys, James Catherall here. I'm at Arcadia High School. We're going to walk through their electronics setup. Let's get to it. So starting off with the main synth cart, up here on top, we're running a Mac Mini. This is a 2014. It's got a 3 gigahertz i7 processor, 16 gigabytes of RAM, and we're running Mojave on it, Mac OS. So a little bit backwards in operating systems. We just want to make sure we're on a stable one that we feel good about. And then the MIDI controllers is an Alesis V25. So this is just a 25 key to trigger some samples. Also using a Yamaha P45. This is a fully weighted 88 key MIDI controller, so it has that more realistic feel for our piano players. And then we're using a Lix Pro monitor so that the synth player can hear themselves while they're playing on the field. And then we just have regular keyboard, USB mouse, and then a monitor right here. It's just a pretty cheap monitor just to make sure we can see what we're doing. And then right here in the rack, start here on the left side, we're using the Yamaha TO1608. So this is a stage box, gives us some extra inputs and outputs for our mixer. This is our battery backup. I believe this is an APC battery backup, rack mounted. And then we only use one of these amplifiers. This is the Yamaha P7000S, and that just runs some of our speakers that we'll show you a little bit later on the field. Then if we come over here, in the middle, that's just where we store some of the cables before we have everything plugged in and set up. But then over here, this is our main mixer. We're using the Yamaha TF rack. And this is our main hub. Everything goes in and out through here. This is what's going to the speakers and delivering our main source of sound and all of our inputs. And then below that, we just made a custom patch panel so that the students don't have to fiddle in the back with anything. They can just plug everything in the front. So when we do the full setup, everything gets plugged in here. We have some USB, some MIDI. We have some 25-pin connectors that we use for the Planet Waves mod snakes. And then some speakers and some PowerCon and all things of that nature. This is our Synth 2 cart for our second synth player. It's got another laptop on it, but actually all of the keyboard sounds is being run off of the main laptop from the main synth cart. What we have on this laptop here is actually running some of our audio with our microphones that we have and our soloist microphones. This laptop controls those and turns them on and off throughout the show. We'll talk about that one a little bit more later, but this is running macOS Big Sur. It's got a 2.2 gigahertz quad-core i7 processor. It's using 16 gigabytes of RAM. And this one's a little bit more up-to-date that we use just for the audio stuff. Beyond that, we have an Akai 25-key MIDI controller here, and this is just for them to trigger some patch changes and some other things for this laptop so that they can go through that throughout the show. And then going here from left to right, we have the Shure power distribution system. So this is for all of our wireless channels that we use. This also powers the paddles that we have. They're not set up at the moment, but those will be set up in a little bit when we head over to the field. And then below that, we're using 4 Shure QLXD4 wireless transmitters and wireless transmitters and receivers. And then from there, we're using a Tascam 1608 as our audio interface for this one. It's just giving us a couple more inputs for some of those audio channels. And then this is getting sent over to the TF, where that then takes the audio that's going to go out to the main speakers. And then down here, we just have this little router that's kind of tucked away in there, and that's what's connecting all of our different Shure QLXDs together, so they're networked, and that helps when it's finding wireless channels. Over here, if we keep moving to the right, we got an APC backup battery for this cart, so it has its own backup power. And then we just got a little toolbox right here with different shelves of tools to use anytime we need it in a quick hurry. And then this is just another personal monitor for the other synth players so that they can hear themselves coming out of here. So one final piece on our main synth cart is we have our router. This is how we mix wirelessly. We're running an ASUS router over the 5 gigahertz band on it so that we can connect with a little bit of a stronger signal, and that's how we'll hook up the iPad or even connect a laptop and set up in the bleachers and do some screen sharing so that we can do all of that wirelessly and we don't have to run up to the synth cart and keep doing it every single time. So we got one quick tip. go right here. It's just a little quality of life tip. We have these two flash drives that are tied to the TF rack, and these both house our backups for our TF rack and our backups for our MainStage concerts. So that way, every single time rehearsal ends, the synth players are just backing it up onto these flash drives. And then if we need it in a pinch at a show, we have them right here. They're just attached to it. Don't get lost. Don't go anywhere. So we have 4 sets of our main speakers right here. We got pretty lucky with these. These came from our Performing Arts Center that they have a super nice one on campus. And they went and bought new speakers and said that we could have their old ones that they're not using anymore. So these are Danley Sound Labs is the company that makes these. And we have 2 on each side of the field. These ones are on the 35 and then the 30 out there, and then same thing on the opposite side. And then inside of that, we have 2 turbo sounds we're using as center fills. Those turbo sounds are passive speakers that we have the amp for in the synth cart, and then these ones are active speakers. And then on top of that, we have 2 DXS 18 Yamaha subs that we're using, and that's in the second row of our front ensemble for the sub support. So this is how we mount the mics on our Mallet instruments. It's pretty little like a homemade system we put together. It's just a Velcro tie right here onto the mic, and then some bungee paracord that we've cut with scissors. And then on top is basically like a bungee spring clip, I think is what they're called, but it's something you might see on like a windbreaker jacket with those bungees. And then we just tie that around the resonators, and that hangs from there. One reason that we like it is that it's super discreet. When you're sitting up in the box, you can't see them at all. It gives us a lot of flexibility, as you can just pull on these to raise it higher or lower, and then you can just move it around the resonators. Usually we'll find spots where that player plays the most. So if they play more in the upper octaves, we'll hang the mics there. If they play a lot in the lower octaves, then we'll move those mics depending on what player. We have 4 of these field mic stations set up in some strategic spots across the field. They're set up in an XY pattern, and we have 2 small diaphragm condenser microphones, or what also are known as pencil condenser microphones. And these are just helping us pick up some spots of the show. We don't have them on all the time. We have some ways of getting these things turned on and off that we're going to talk about in a second over at our MainStage laptop. But helps us get a little bit fuller and some nice strong projection up to the stand for the whole audience to be able to hear. Here on the second synth cart, we have another laptop set up. And actually, this is just controlling all of our soloist mics and our field mics. All of their actual synth sounds is coming from our main setup over there from the Mac Mini. So right here, what we have is a separate concert that this synth player controls with this 25 key controller. They're switching patches through here, and each of these patches turns on and turns off different mics throughout the show. So that way they can be controlled, and we don't have all the mics on all the time, and we don't have to worry about someone else turning on and off all of the soloist mics throughout the show. It just happens right here from that synth player. We're only using 1 soloist mic with an alto sax, and that's going through the QOL XD4, and that's all connected with a router in the back with Ethernet cables. And then that also goes through the power distribution system that sends it up to these paddles, so it helps get a more consistent connection for the wireless packs and that wireless soloist. We'll often use either wireless workbench or just the scan feature on the QOL XD just to make sure that we have a good frequency and it's nice and strong and it has a good connection during the performances. When we're connecting all our microphones together, we use what we call a daisy chaining system. So each instrument has a microphone cable on it, and that's going to connect so that the outside vibe connects a mic cable to the vibe next to it, connects to the instrument next to that. And then that ends up in what we would call a breakout cable, or we also use these stage boxes from Planet Waves and D'Addario. All of the cables end up into that stage box, and then that runs over using a 25-pin connector over to our mixer, and then that's how all the cables are connected. Makes it a little bit easier so everyone doesn't have to run to a snake in the middle of the ensemble. Each person's just connecting their cables to the person next to them, and it helps things move a little bit more efficiently when we have to have those quick setups. So we don't have a mixer on the track like some groups will do. We leave everything in the front ensemble, so the mixer and all of that is with the synth carts. And during performances and even during rehearsals, we'll connect to the mixer via the Yamaha Stage Mix app on the iPad, and we'll just mix remotely from there. So someone will be on the track, someone will go up in the stands, or they'll be up towards the box. And then we'll be able to make adjustments to the mixer. And then sometimes we'll also do a little bit of screen sharing as well, where someone will have a computer up in the stands, and then we'll be able to make adjustments to MainStage through that screen sharing. So that way we don't have to have that big distraction of a mixer on the track. We can just do it remotely. So that's our electronics setup at Arcadia High School. If you have any thoughts or comments or questions, feel free to leave those in the comments down below. I'll have links for all of the gear down in the description as well, so you guys can check out all the specific stuff that we're using. Make sure you subscribe and hit that like button, and we'll see you in the next video.